I think it's important for our community to be aware of how we've moved since the creation of this district and how we're going to move forward in the future, especially in these uncertain times. So I would like to highlight that we were one of the first 14 districts in the state to move to a one-to-one blended learning community. And we've been planning for this. It was part of our strategic plan when we talked about 21st century schools since we were created. So if you can look at the chart there in front of you, in fiscal year 15, we had just over 2,000 devices in our schools, and we had over 6,000 students in our schools. If you look at where we are today, we're now at over 8,838 devices in our district. And so this has really helped prepare us for blended learning and also a quick transition into virtual school if need be. We've invested over $750,000 in infrastructure. That's included investments in cybersecurity, development of digital citizenship. We've added keyboarding and computer classes as part of the MAPS rotations in our schools. So know that we have had an extensive process to prepare just on the hardware side and also on the software side. But more important, we realized at the beginning of this process that this was a change in people, and this is a change in the way that people and staff are prepared to teach our students. So this really has been a 5-year program. So Schoology is a good example. That's our learning management system. It's a way for teachers to post activities, assignments, for students to turn those into teachers. We knew that this was going to be something that would require training. So in the first year of the implementation, we started off with one teacher and also the technology staff going to training at Schoology seminars nationally. And then the following year, we started with a pilot group of individuals at the high school level, teachers at the high school level and in classes. Then the year after that, we expanded that as the devices were also expanding to all of our high school and some middle school students. So know that the same way, and this was actually quicker than we had planned, but now it has been expanded with PD for our staff and also for our parents to the elementary school level. But this is something that we've been planning for a long time and has taken a lot of practice and preparation for. You look at what we've done around Accelerated Reader and adding the MyOn library for our students so that we have virtual libraries that they can read and have access. Plato, which is a course recovery software system. Dreambox, which is for math instruction, and that also chooses an individual path for students based on their assessments. Moving to virtual science textbooks and other textbooks virtually, and there are lots of different software programs that I think it's important to say that we haven't just bought those programs and prepared for those, but we have trained our staff and our communities for those. We've had trainings in Flipgrid, Nearpod, Turnitin, OneNote, Google Suite, Schoology, Skyward, all these things in preparation for moving to that blended learning and that one-to-one environment. And what does that do for us now? And you can see the items listed on the side, whether it's the security systems like Barracuda or it's a learning system like Dreambox or MyOn. This has prepared us for where we are to this day, and it's taken a lot of effort from our staff to do so. But how can we pivot and how can we transition? What you're seeing across the state of Tennessee is that they are in a crisis, because we know that there's a possibility that in the future, school is going to have virtual components to it. The federal government and state government are going to provide CARES Act funding, and that stands for Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. We don't have that funding yet. The state is supposed to submit their plan federally, and then it's going to trickle down to the state districts. But instead of us chasing hardware and the infrastructure to do this, we can pivot because we are truly one-to-one and now focus on those things in the district that are going to help move into this virtual transition. So you can see the amount that's predicted for Germantown Municipal School District. We're predicted to get $1.4 million in funding. And the timeline, that there was supposed to be a webinar today. They're a little delayed in this process. But in the next couple of days, we're expecting a webinar from the state on how this approval process is going to work. They're using the e-plan system. So by May 26th, we're supposed to have a plan and of how we move into and use this funding into this virtual world. And then the application is supposed to close June 15th. By June 30th, the application should be reviewed and then awarded, but that is a tentative date. based on the release of the federal funding. So know that our moving into that blended world has really prepared us for the next steps and really moved into virtual learning. We have the tools, and I hate to sound like the beginning of the $1 Million Man movie. We have the technology, we have the tools. As a district, our staff is trained and we are prepared to fully move into a virtual environment. However, there are some limitations and some things that we have to be aware of. We do have governing bodies as a public school in the state of Tennessee, and we covered this during our last board meeting, that we have to be aware of. First and foremost, know that there are going to be some decisions from CDC and Health Department that we're going to have to follow. If we can click to the next slide. If you don't already, on Instagram, you can follow the Shelby County Health Department, and you can see the COVID-19 daily updates there, where they actually show the number of positive tests, the number of deaths, and the recovered cases just in Shelby County. The local municipalities and the city of Memphis are using that information from the health department to move our municipalities and cities through phases of reopening. So know that today there was a big release that we have moved into phase 2 based on the number of cases, and then eventually we'll move into phase 3. As we get ready for the new school year and get ready to move into virtual learning, this will be one of the determining factors of how quickly we move. The health department is going to play a role. Our municipalities and the phases of reopening are going to play a role in our decision-making process. But if you go to the CDC guidelines, they have some very specific recommendations, and they may actually be requirements. The health department does have the ability to close schools if they determine that it is for the greater good of the community. But no, you can see there is a flow chart for how this would work. One thing that we need to take into consideration is, as we open school and as we get ready to start a new school year, what happens when we have a student or we have a staff member that is confirmed of having COVID-19? So they are going to recommend, they're going to assess the risk, but they're going to recommend a short 2 to 5 day building dismissal for us to clean, disinfect, and also to trace who that individual has come in contact with. Other things that they're going to recommend, once we see substantial community spread, which we have already seen in Shelby County, we're going to have to consider social distancing strategies for gatherings in our classrooms, how students move through the buildings. And we're also going to have to plan for these extended dismissals, which will include the virtual teaching and virtual learning components. Also, at the same time that is happening, we will have to have relief from our Tennessee School Board. There is a rules for the State Board of Education, and that includes the minimum requirements to be a public school in Tennessee. This is just a short list. It is an extensive list. The board does have to approve this every single year as we get ready to start as a district. In order for us to move into virtual learning and to be able to count that as days of instruction, we will have to have waivers, or they will have to, for a period of time, suspend some of these rules. So that is something that as a school board, we're going to need to be looking forward to, and we're going to need to advocate for with our local school board or with our state school board. But I think our community understands, and I know our board understands, that we are under numerous state regulations. And in order for us to really be able to do what we are trained to do, what we have prepared for, we are going to need relief from the state school board. We are going to need relief from our state legislator to just essentially throw off the reins and let us be as excellent and as incredible as Germantown schools can be. So we are looking forward to seeing those waivers developed. We're looking forward to see those state school board policies waived, and we're expecting that once they do, our community will be ecstatic with how our district moves and how we have been prepared to move since the creation of our district. Ms. Price, talk a little bit about how we've been preparing for this period of time and when school gets ready to reopen.
Good evening again, everyone. As reported in the last board meeting, timing of this crisis was on our side. As you can see here, we were able to cover the majority of our standards. So we have chosen to partner with Hanover Research Group. They have a platform that will help us to determine the learning loss of our students, and so that we can make projections for the fall to tailor our reopening of schools to meet our students' needs and get back on track as quickly as possible.
Ms. Huffman, if you'll give us a little bit of information about our students.
So sorry, I was having difficulty locating my mute button. It's been a theme for today. Yes, so during this time period and looking forward, we're moving from really telesupport for those related services when we're talking about speech, occupational therapy, and physical therapy to a more formalized approach. So if we are looking at a long-term closure or a mix of that, what can that look like? And working to research different platforms that could provide more resources for our therapists. We've also been finding special ways to make this distance learning meaningful regardless of a student's disability. And hopefully you were able to catch the news at some point this week. It highlighted one of the many activities our teachers are doing to connect with their students and families and make sure that learning doesn't stop and continues in that home setting as well. And then the other piece is looking forward to extended school year. So we have moved those dates to June the 29th through July the 24th. It will be Monday through Thursday from 8:30 to 12:30. And that'll give us the opportunity for those students that were identified prior to closure. And then in addition, teams have been considering students that may need this service as well due to the closure. But it'll give us the opportunity to really assess students and see where they're at and slowly get them back in the routine of being at school.
So I think it's important for our community and for our board to know that we are looking at a tiered approach for possible reopening scenarios. And for each of these, they're multifaceted. We have to look at all the components that are involved with running a school and running a school system. So the easiest way would be if we are just open and we can start school as normal and proceed as we have done in the past. I don't think that is the reality of where we're going to be starting the new school year. We're going to have a lot of things into consideration. I think more likely what we're going to see is that we start school on time, but during the school year, we're going to have closures if and when we have individuals who contract COVID. At that time, we'll have to have all those considerations in place around cleaning methods, social distancing, so we will have all those procedures in place. Another scenario that we may see is that when we have those closures, we move to virtual instruction during the time of closure. We also may have large numbers of students going virtual, but then some students on different schedules, whether it's an A-B schedule. Some students attending school half days, some students may be in school Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, Tuesdays, Thursdays. We're looking at all those different options and making plans so that if we move to that, we will be prepared. And then we may have a virtual situation where we have most of our students attending virtual school, but we may have smaller numbers of students, whether it's our special needs students, or students who are economically disadvantaged, or English language learners, or our small students who are on level tier 3 on the RTI program. So those students who need some more differentiated instruction, we may bring them in. And the smallest one may be that we may actually have some students, special populations like our special needs students attending the physical school, the remainder of the students being in virtual school. And finally, the least restrictive, we may have all of our students receiving virtual instruction. So know that for each of these scenarios, our staff is doing a detailed analysis of all the components and preparing for each of these, because we know that we may see a mix of these and we may be transitioning up and down this continuum. But we want our community to know that we have plans and we are planning and we are prepared. And like I said before, we are better prepared than a lot of the districts around the state because of our previous initiatives with the blended learning and one-to-one model. So there are some guidelines nationally that we are working with organizations. AASA, which is the School Superintendents Association, actually has a back-to-school roadmap. That is a framework that a lot of our departments are using in order, under each of these scenarios, to determine what are the factors, what are the variables that we need to be looking at and considering when we get ready to open school, whether it's governance or wellness, instruction, post-secondary opportunities for students. What are we having to do with our facilities, whether it's transportation? How are we social distancing on buses? School operations, how are we cleaning the facilities? And then technology. Know that this is a framework that we are using to really plan for multiple variations of what our future could hold. So we do have district task force that all of our staff are working on in their different departments. And like I said, it's structured around that roadmap to reopen. Know that our cabinet members are working daily with their teams to address each of these different characteristics in their specific areas. So I would like to take a moment, if we can go back a couple slides, for each of the cabinet members and staff members to go through and talk about what are the different considerations, just 1 or 2 minutes in each of their departments. Know that, board, we are planning in July to do a detailed presentation and analysis on all the work that we've been doing to let our board know and also our community know about how we're moving forward. So we will start with Ms. Price, if you would share briefly about what you and your team have been working on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. As this task can seem quite daunting, it actually is exciting at the same time. I think we've seen more teachers show up for professional development in this mode of learning. What I'm really looking forward to is moving forward into new learning in this environment where we will be looking at taking grades and attendance. To do that this summer, there will be a lot of plans put in place, as Mr. Manuel mentioned, around scheduling. So once we know, once we look at those 6 modes of schedules that we could possibly be looking at, we are currently taking inventory of the software that we have in place and then where we would need to bridge the gap in order to keep learning going on at home in each one of those scenarios. We also want to make it seamless for teachers if they have to go back and forth between in-building learning and online learning, or if they're meeting students' needs in both types of environments. So with that, we also have a task force that's looking at additional products that we may need to add to our repertoire of those things to help ease that for teachers and students. Our task force consists of every single building being involved, whether it's administrators or teachers, and we've broken it out into 3 different committees at this time. So that's a little bit about what we're doing right now.
Okay, well, I will go next since I see my picture next. And as you know, special education and exceptional students are just a complement and a service to what we're doing in Tier 1. So in addition to working very closely with TLA to ensure students with disabilities receive access and equity or support, we are also looking at providing a continuity of learning for students with disabilities, because we know there's not a one-size-fits-all. So those students that aren't able to take advantage of those programs in the same way, we are looking for multiple different solutions. So many of our students have and will be able to continue to access and benefit from structures, but we've been looking at providing differentiated supports during the closure. And I'm sorry, my daughter just came in and it threw me completely off. So I'm like, exit out of the room. Y'all can't see it on the video. But looking forward, we will be assessing and identifying all needs a student may have and looking at necessary supports to meet those areas. We've been researching additional digital platforms, like I was speaking to earlier with the teletherapy, as well as additional academic support. So those could be our students, that have very mild to those that have more severe. looking for engaging ways for students to engage with technology, and for those that cannot, what do those academic supports look like, and how can we continue to provide services and FAPE during closure times. Looking at staffing considerations and all sorts of things with grouping, as well as working with Mr. Cathy to ensure the health and safety of our most vulnerable population. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bland.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. With the anticipated opening of schools in the fall, we understand that there will be some challenges and some things that we just don't know. There are a lot of unknowns at this time. And for that, we're compiling a list of precautions to use as a guide for best practices in the Student Services Department. And that will entail nurses and school counselors. For example, it's being considered to have only one person at a time allowed in the clinic. And after that student leaves the clinic, disinfectants will be used to clean the areas before the next student will come in. Also, minor issues such as scrapes, cuts, bags of ice, those types of things, those things that can be handled in the classroom so that we don't have to expose the kids to the clinic, and that limits the number of kids coming into the clinic. Additionally, school counselors and social with teachers to identify students who may have been affected by COVID and experiencing any of the following behaviors or issues such as grief and loss. They may have had relatives or friends or someone that they have known to die as a result of COVID, and provide them with resources that they need to cope with those things. And also making resources available for families who may be experiencing financial as a result of unemployment or job loss or furloughs. Also, fear and anxiety related to catching an illness. Some kids may be hesitant about coming to school for fear of getting sick, and also anxiety due to possible interruptions in their academic classes. If we have to start and stop and start and stop. Also, attendance issues. Some may not feel comfortable sending their kids back to school, so we have to come up with plans and adjust policies and procedures so that students aren't being penalized because of attendance issues. And also, as far as the community, what will sports or group activities look like in the fall or upon returning to school? And we also understand that it's important to provide teachers with information about signs or things to look for so that they can refer students appropriately so that they can get the help that they need. And those are some of the things that we've been working on. I didn't include them all, but it's an ongoing task. Ms. Law and Ms. Kennedy are meeting with school school counselors weekly and getting their input and things that they're concerned about. And we're just all sitting down and discussing them to come up with possible solutions. So with that being said, Mr. Cathy, I see you're next.
Mr. Cathy, you may be muted.
Muted. Sorry. Can I be heard now?
You can be heard now.
Very good. I'll start with a bit of personal experience. As I've been driving Germantown or running Germantown lately, I can tell you who is not social distancing, and that's children who are leaving their homes and playing in the neighborhoods. So as I've had that personal experience and I've seen that firsthand, it's really kind of guided my thinking and made me look at that. And we're living in a time where we've never experienced this before, and our kids, just like the adults, are struggling with how to deal with this and what social distancing looks like. And the kids are not alone; the adults are struggling with it as well. All you have to do is take a trip to one of the local businesses, be it grocery, be it anything that's open, and you will see that adults also have very different reactions to what social distancing looks like and what PPE looks like and how they're responding. So as we're preparing for the next school year, I've looked at that personally and taken all of that into account. What we are looking at on the facility side of things for getting ready for the next school year, I think it's important that we do a PR push for education on how COVID-19 enters the human body so that our students, our staff, and our parents understand how that takes place. And that guidance changes, as I'm sure all the board is aware, that changes daily, weekly, on the guidance that how it enters the body. But the push that we're going to make is it enters through a couple of different ways, and the main ways that it enters is through the respiratory system and through the air, but also through touch and through surfaces that are contact. So one of the items that we're going to really emphasize and push, and Ms. Huffman mentioned it earlier, her population is the most vulnerable population. And so we're really going to push the education piece as best we can to our students, our parents, and our staff on how COVID-19 enters the human body and precautions to take. So as far as the precautions to take, we're looking at taking a two-pronged focus on personal and environmental hygiene. This is the best analogy. I'm an analogy person, and the best analogy I know to give, we've talked about security, physical security for the buildings. And we can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars putting locks on doors and cameras in place and procedures in place. But all it takes is one student walking up and opening a side door for someone who's knocking on it. And all of our best plans are blown out of the water and our security is null and void. So we're really going to, just like security, where we're taking a two-pronged approach with systems and facilities and human behavior, it's going to be a very similar approach that we take with this, where we take a two-pronged focus on personal and environmental hygiene. The personal hygiene piece will be, that's where personal responsibility comes in, where we're going to focus on education, training, signage regarding proper personal hygiene. An example would be hand cleaning techniques and how to properly clean and wash hands, how to use hand sanitizer, all of those different education pieces that go towards personal hygiene and taking care of personal hygiene and personal property and sanitizing it the correct way. The environmental hygiene piece will focus on cleaning, disinfecting process, procedures for areas specific to our schools, and we have a lot of areas, everything from classrooms to cafeterias to kitchens to elevators to faculty lounges. So we already have a set process and procedure for how those areas are cleaned in place. But we are looking at those and scrutinizing those and looking to revamp those based on COVID-19. Some specific items that we are looking into the possibility of implementing. One of those includes a total Clorox 360 machine in every building. We recently had our district office treated with one of these machines, and we have had our schools treated with one of these machines when there has been a pandemic situation occur. But those machines are spray machines, and they have the ability to treat 18,000 square feet per hour and disinfect it. And we currently have been using disinfectants that have a 10-minute kill rate on COVID, but we're looking at switching to disinfectants that have a 2-minute kill rate on COVID-19 in order to speed the process. So we're looking at all of those procedures. We're looking at bringing total Clorox 360 machines into every building. One of the side notes, one of the lessons we learned during our lead testing, once students are allowed to return, prior to their return, we are going to flush all water fixtures prior to students re-entering the building so that water will have had a chance to flow through that building so we don't have water standing in pipes. We are going to look at spray bottles with disinfectant for all teachers, staff, common areas so that those spray bottles are readily available with disinfectants that have a high kill rate. We're going to look at hand sanitizer for classrooms and common areas, personal protective equipment. We are going to look at implementing a quality assurance software implementation so that if there is a problem with custodial service or an area that has not been sanitized to standards, that plant managers can put in work orders to address those situations. We are going to look at distancing procedures in classrooms, in cafeterias, outdoor play spaces and outdoor play procedures, bathroom trips, buses, athletic events, and the list goes on. But we're going to look at every one of those situations that occurs on a daily basis in education and look at procedures that will fit and will be effective for us. We are also going to examine and modify all of our cleaning and disinfecting procedures with our custodial provider, including processes, supplies used, kill rate, and frequency of cleaning. And we will, as always, stay in tune with our implementing guidance from our governing bodies, which a lot of those governing bodies have already been mentioned. But if the Shelby County Health Department or many of the other governing bodies that we are under states that we have to implement certain cleaning procedures or certain facilities procedures, we will implement those procedures. And that's all I have.
Mr. Jones, if you go next.
As we look at our school nutrition program, with the reopening of schools, the district will work closely with the food service management company and also with principals to ensure any social distancing requirements are met. Appropriate spatial separation practices will be created into operations. We'll look at new service offerings that we can introduce to best meet evolving student dining facilities and other needs. We will also look at options to serve student meals depending upon classroom schedules. Maybe even look at possible classroom delivery of meals. We will also work with the food service management company to ensure proper cleaning and disinfection of food preparation areas to ensure that they are performed. As we look at the financial position of the district, over the past 6 years, the district has created a reserve of approximately $20 million. This was accomplished with conservative revenue estimates and careful spending by all cabinet members. The reserve was built intentionally to cover future technology initiatives, capital project needs, and emergency or unplanned situations such as COVID-19. Right now, we're currently tracking COVID-19 related expenditures by using Skyward's project accounting and reporting system. As the $1.5 million in CARES Act funding becomes available to the district, we will be in a position to easily seek reimbursement from the Tennessee Department of Education for COVID-19 related expenditures. And those are my comments, Ms. Stratton.
Thanks. Some of the considerations the Human Resources Department is focusing on for next year include re-educating our employees on all of the available staff resources they have to utilize. For example, our employee assistance program, which is called Concern, is available to all of our employees as well as their family members to help them with various stressors that they may be facing, whether it's through work or home life. Also, our Call-A-Doc teletherapy will help assist our employees and their family members with medical needs without having to take a significant time off. Now, we do realize that some of our staff may need to take an approved leave of absence that is related to COVID-19. So we want to make sure that our employees are educated on the procedures and the guidelines that are associated with the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And speaking of some of those leaves of absences, we are currently working with Kelly Services to recruit additional substitutes needed for employees next year. We've finalized a telework agreement with Kelly Services for the interims, and we are exploring the option that Kelly Services can provide additional personnel specifically for cleaning or conducting student and employee wellness checks. And then finally, we're working on refining our minimum expectations, employee duties, and obligations, as well as identifying any necessary employee trainings for both our certified and classified staff in order to keep all employees and students safe, as well as planning for the needs to work remotely. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Crowder, who's going to talk to you about communications.
Germantown has a history of strong community engagement, and while COVID-19 has presented many obstacles, it has certainly also affirmed that our families are still plugged in and they are willing to be incredible partners in their children's education. We want to thank all the stakeholders who have reached out to us with questions, comments, and their concerns. We were incredibly proud that our technology survey this spring, we asked you and you answered, and we were able to quickly mobilize our very own GMSD delivery service, delivering devices, packets, and children's books to all of the families who asked us. We look forward to a similar relationship as we move into the future plans. We are here to help, and we will continue to ask our families what they need. As this team comprehensively plans for these 6 very different scenarios, the district is also simultaneously developing a roadmap specifically for communications that should keep parents, staff, students, and community members informed over the summer on lots of key issues like graduation, budget, transportation, meal services, extended school year, hiring, professional development, athletics, after-school activities, board meetings, technology access and distribution, and then, of course, our back-to-school plans for the fall of 2020. As these plans begin to unfold and the situation continues to change each day, we ask that all of our stakeholders stay connected with GMSD over the summer. We will also continue to centralize all of the updates that our team is making at our website, found at www.gmsdk12.org. We encourage families to engage with our team in two-way communication in the form of questions, comments, and concerns. And over the summer, many of our departments on this task force will also be reaching out to stakeholder committees to preview plans and offer an additional chance to provide feedback. In short, we greatly value your voice in this process. The district also this summer will be proactively seeking feedback from all parents through the use of surveys and frequent check-ins. Our team wants to know how GMSD can best meet your family's needs within each scenario. So in summary, stay tuned as back-to-school plans developed and stay connected to the district. And finally, we encourage all community members to participate in upcoming opportunities for feedback. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Manuel. Thank you.
So I think, I hope our community understands we are ready, we are able, we have the ability to teach new material, to take grades, to move forward, regardless of what scenario we experience as school gets ready to start. I'm thankful for my team. I'm thankful for all of our staff who've been working hard during this time. It has been challenging for our staff. A lot of us who were here at the beginning when we created the district we're having extended days. We're experiencing that now because of the volume and the amount of work and preparation for all of these different scenarios. So I'm thankful to all of my team members, my task force getting ready for this. And I hope that our board and our community, that we've calmed some fears so that they know that we're planning. But I hope also that we've whet their appetite because, like I said, we are going to share in July with our community the details of all these plans, taking all these variables into consideration. And hopefully everyone will see that we are going to shine just like we always do. And with that, as I always say, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Manuel, and thank you to the district staff for that report and for all of the work that went into that report.